Hello and welcome to the Airing It Out podcast. I am your host, Sam. Now, today we're going to be doing something a little bit more different than usual. We're going to be doing more of a story time episode. I know, first time in a while. But we're going to be looking at how a recent trip of mine became an opportunity or more a path to healing from some of the most traumatic experiences in my past 8.5 years. You'll want to stick around because at the end we're going to be going over some of the tips and takeaways and what I have learned on this journey that you might be able to implement into your own life. So grab your popcorn, grab your box of tissues, whatever it is that you need, settle in, get comfortable, and thank you for joining us on the Airing It Out podcast. No. Before we get started, before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's episode, I'm going to take a quick little moment to just say, if you have the time, please give us a follow on YouTube, give us a follow on Spotify, and make sure to keep up with us on our socials. And we've got TikTok and we've got Instagram. We'll have more coming up, but for now, give us a follow on one of those to stay up to date with everything that we're doing. And if you want to take the support a little bit further, if you believe in what it is that we're doing and you want to support us as creators, get our message out to more people and help afford us the time to be able to do what we love doing and what we believe in more, then please consider donating to our Buy Me a Coffee. You can find the link in the description, or you can find it on our website, or you can look at one of our socials and find it there. It would mean a hell of a lot to us. But times are tough, and if you can't afford to contribute and help us out, then a like, comment, a favourite, but more importantly, a share would go so far for us. Thank you. Let's get into the episode. So, naturally, the story begins in somewhere a little bit darker. You know, this wouldn't be a mental health journey story if everything started all hunky-dory. Don't get your hopes up. This isn't a rhyming story. The whole rest of the episode will not be in rhyme. How cool would that be? It was around August, September and October. My mental health had started to decline. My mental health had started to decline and I began to kind of submerge into a crisis state. I was doing too much. I was working. I'd just taken a job on full time. It was long hours, 5 days a week. And on top of that, I was trying to balance a relationship. I was trying to balance work with the fire service and my development. I was trying to balance exercise, and I was also hosting a support group. So I was doing far too much and I had no time for myself. And the time that I did have for myself in the evenings, which I might have usually been able to afford an hour before going to bed, I was just kind of sat there thinking, like, what do I do? Like the time became so void of meaning. And things just started to get worse and worse, and I started to decline, and I could tell from the work and its physical nature that I was beginning to burn out. But I knew that this one was going to be a bad one because I burnt out many times before. I went through a period a couple of years ago where for about 2 or 3 months I was burning out every 2 weeks because I was trying something new and being far too intense about it. But this was like the perfect storm of burnouts. Over a long period of time, it was arduous, no real time for rest, not really able to give myself any rest. And everything was starting to slowly, implode. Now, I could tell that this burnout was coming and it was going to be the mother of all burnouts, but there were other symptoms as well. Something that I noticed within myself was that I'd stopped talking. And when I refer back to it, I say that I'd lost my voice. It wasn't that I'd stopped being able to physically speak. It was more that when I was presented with an opportunity or an instance where I wanted to say something that I had on my mind, for whatever reason, I'd find myself kind of biting my breath and holding my tongue, and for some reason I couldn't get it out. It's happened numerous occasions and it was awful. I knew that it wasn't good, but it just became like a snowball effect. Every time where I wanted to say something but couldn't bring myself to say it, that would then make the next time twice as hard to produce that voice, give my opinion or have my say. And I was becoming silenced. Like, I was losing my voice. And that was when I began to realize, okay, we need to address this. Something isn't going right. Or if anything, there isn't much that's going right. And there's an awful lot that is going wrong at the moment. So let's take a step back and see what we can do. There have been numerous attempts for me to try and save myself, but they were kind of futile and kind of quick and easy, hard and fast attempts to save myself, but they weren't meaningful. They might have lasted for a day or two, but eventually overlapped into something becoming negative again. So in some way, I had to pull myself out of the reeds. I had to pull myself out of that dark hole before things became so worse that I completely snapped. It was the worst that I had been since the start of my mental health issues, like 8.5 years ago now. And that was significant. I was struggling to talk. I could barely look after myself. I had no time for myself. So I thought, let's go back to something that I knew worked. And I decided of my own volition to go back to counselling. I've mentioned it a few times on the podcast that I had been doing counselling. And I always said that I would mention it and I would bring it back up. But I wanted to do it properly. And at no point up until now did it seem appropriate. So for those of you that have been curious, thank you for your patience. But all will soon be told. Seeing as though this mental health crisis, one of the main symptoms was that I felt I had lost my voice, it made sense to me to go back to my old counsellor and do a little bit of speech therapy. Talking. That was it. Plain and simple. Go and talk to somebody. Because of the context, the situations and circumstances, and the fact that in my personal life I was finding it difficult to open up or communicate or reach out to certain people, having that safe space with somebody that I'd known from, maybe 6 years ago. So it seemed appropriate to go back and talk to her. But I wanted to go with an objective because it wasn't my first rodeo. It might have been my second or third, but I knew kind of what to anticipate with going back to counselling. And in this mental health decline that I'd been experiencing, I couldn't help but reflect on the times that I was at work thinking, there's got to be more than this. I became a little bit existential and things going from bad to worse. I thought this cannot just be it. There has to be more. There's so much I wanted out of my life that I was really struggling to kind of put into action. And I thought, this isn't right. Or at the very least, if it's not right, it could be better. I believed deeply that there was potential for things, for my life to be better. It was there. I knew it was there. It could be done. And I knew that the life that I was living, which had amounted to the place that I was in, that wasn't it. That was not it. That is not all that this world, this universe has to offer me. There's more. And I thought, if there's more, if there's that smallest chance of more, right now when a whole sewage plant's worth of shit is hitting the fan, I'm going to go and fight for it. I'm going to take that chance and push for something better. So I went back to counselling. And it was interesting connecting with my counsellor after approximately 6 years, because one of the most interesting things that I still think is still wraps my mind is that she said, for however much I have changed in those 6 years, from who she knew me as initially to who I had become recently, she said, so much has changed about you, but some of your problems have remained the same. And I heard that and I thought, oh, fuck. Okay, we're not going to go into that just yet. I still haven't figured that one out. But what an interesting thought. And the first episode was very much offloading all of that stuff that I just kept from myself, these things and observations. I can be very perceptive. I pick up a lot of things and I'm analytical by nature. So when you have perception and analytical minus the talking and saying everything. It just bottles everything up, my goodness. So that first one was just getting it all out there. But one of the things that my counsellor helped me realise was that of all the things that I was doing, work, fire service, support group, training, relationship, how much of that was actually for me versus how much of what I'm doing is for or in service to somebody else? What time am I taking for myself? And I thought, oh my goodness, okay. Because at that point, I was pretty much living in service to other people. So much that when I had that small part of the day for myself at the end, I didn't know what to do with it. I was kind of stuck and got to it and I was like, oh, what now? Another interesting observation. And something to take away from that session was, okay, well, all these things that you're doing for other people, they're wants. You know, you want to be doing this, you want to be earning money, you want to be supporting the community, you want to be helping people. But what do you need? Because so often we misinterpret with the language that we have in our head. We put ourselves under pressure. And so what are our wants? We disguise as, or we perceive as our needs. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to do this. I need to do that. When in actual fact, quite often, if we remove that pressure, those are things that you want to do. The first session helped me realize that so many of those things, if I stepped away from them, would still be all right. They'd still be okay. They'd still be functioning with or without me. So my contribution to them wasn't a need. It was something that I wanted to do. And it's okay if at some point I don't want to do them anymore because I'm not obligated and I don't need to do that. Just another little thought for you. What are your needs? What are your wants? Are there some things in your life that you feel as though you need to do when in actual fact it's something that you want to do? My homework for that session was, okay, all of these things that you're doing are wants, but what are your needs? And that took me a while because I thought, geez, man, I hadn't thought about that I don't know how long, I don't think I ever have. What are the things that I need? Particularly now in this moment of near crisis. And the things that I identified was that I need to see the world. I need to get out of this place that I have been because for a very long time, this county, this village, this house and this room was where I had existed for a very long time. Unfortunately, that was something that was beyond my control. I wasn't well enough to actively and independently be a part of a greater world because I wasn't well enough. But now it's getting to the point where I am, and I think I was having this internal resistance, like, fuck me, I'm there now, come on, just let me go, let me free. And I was just trying to really break out of that. So that was the biggest one for me, to get out, to be free and to try set myself free from something, whether it was this situation that I'm in. But I think ultimately the biggest thing that I wanted to set myself free from was my past. I looked at my life and I mentioned earlier, there were still things about it which I thought, no, it's got to be better than this. And I think during that time I realised that I was actually still living with some of the skeletons of my traumas. There were things that I was too irrationally afraid of doing. There were things that I really desperately wanted to do, but I couldn't bring myself to do. And it's a difficult one to explain, but it felt very much like some of the problems that I was facing were linked to some of the things which I had gone through. And when I went into therapy to begin with, the very first thing that I did, we did EMDR. And Luke and I have spoken about that on the episode that I did with him. So if you want to know a little bit more about what EMDR is, particularly in Luke's situation, go check out that episode. But what EMDR is it essentially takes a traumatic incident or an incident that it remains in the kind of left-hand side of your brain, which is the active side of your brain, and it shifts it to the right side of your brain, which is more the categorized and kind of library storage side of your brain. So it takes it from the active, seeing it all the time, doing it all the time, and compartmentalizes it. And something that I realized was that, oh shit, like, I thought that had healed me from that traumatic, I thought that had healed me from the trauma. But then I realized, oh shit, just because I've put it from one side of my brain into the categorized side of my brain doesn't mean that I've actually healed from it. Fuck, okay, that makes sense. I'd shifted it from the active to the storage, but at what point in that process does that mean that I've gone over it and processed it? God, okay. Session 2, digging into the deep stuff. In my experiences, counselling sessions can often be, let's just talk. A counsellor is happy to talk to you about whatever it is that you want to talk to for however long the session lasts, and then we'll see you again next week. But no, I meant business. I knew what I wanted to go. So I walked in that room, I said, right, come on, we're going to talk about this. It's going to get fucking nasty. It's going to be horrible. I'm going to hate it, but we're doing it. We're digging into the fucking depths here. Yes. It took me a while to get round to it. And it was, I said to her, I think I need to see somebody who specialises in trauma, or someone that can help. I had all these ideas about what it would have taken because I thought it was drug induced. I thought, fuck, maybe I need to do shitloads of shrooms and confront my demons. No, that was not necessary. And I'm not going to advocate for that. She said, well, I've got some experience in it, so we're going to try and do that. I will also preface that I am not a professional. The person that I worked with is a professional, but the person that I worked with is not here to do this episode with me. So I am only going to be talking about my experiences. Please, if you have anything that you might want to consider getting professional help with, consider contacting a professional. Please do not use what I have said as valid incentive to do what I'm talking about. I'm only talking about my experiences here. She said, yeah, well, okay, we can try something. So she said, just sit down and close your eyes, and I want you to go back there. I want you to go back to that incident and kind of put yourself in the body, in the mind of that version of me, or that was me. I said, how do you feel? And I said every way that I felt. And I kind of began to feel these things. Okay, it was starting to get very real. And then she said, okay, well, what I want you to do now is I want you, as you are now, sat across from me, to go back there. I want you to go into that crowd, and I want you to go and find him. And I want you to take him out. And what do you want to say to him? You've got him there in front of you. What do you want to do? I said, I want to tell him that he's safe. I want to tell him that no one's going to hurt him. I want to tell him that you don't have to suffer, that we can get away from here. We can go. No one's going to hurt you. You're safe, and that everything's going to be all right. And building that connection between my present self and my past self, it was hard to differentiate. It was hard not to differentiate them as two separate individuals. But it left me pretty, not stunned, not taken, I was taken aback. it was very real. It was very visceral while we were doing it, and it was very raw. However, this was towards the end of the session, so we actually ran out of time. So my counsellor said, okay, what I want you to do is I want you to go home, and at some point when you can, do the same kind of exercise, but actually take him away somewhere. Take him away to a safe place and see what happens. I thought, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Oh, and I remember it very vividly. It was on my way home. I started getting emotional because I was thinking about it, and she said, keep saying those things. I can protect you. I can keep you safe. No one's going to hurt you. And I literally had to pull over in the middle of a main road. I just fucking cried my eyes out. Jesus, man. I cried so much, more than I have in a long time. I bawled my eyes out. And it was so real. Oh my God. Afterwards, after the therapy sessions, you're talking about quite intense emotional stuff. So you're usually left quite, for those of you watching on video, you'll be able to hear, you're left quite, for those of you listening, you're kind of left like a little bit of a husk, like a little bit of an emotional void, because you've just had to bring up loads of stuff. But oh my goodness, after that day, I was, whew. So it took a minute. It took a minute for me to find an opportunity to do that work that I'd been suggested. And it was actually on my birthday that I had the time to do it. So I sat here, and near enough the position that you might be watching me now, or for those of you listening, near enough in this position where I am sat, we are recording this. Closed my eyes, I got comfortable, and I went back there, and I took that younger version of me away. I took him to a safe place, and I spoke to him, and I had a chat, and I put my arm around him and told him that things were going to be okay, that we are safe, that I can protect him. And yeah, I went back and found him and took him away, and I kept him safe. And yeah, it was weird because I was visualizing it the whole time, and after a while he began to disappear, and before he did, he said to me, now it's time for you to be free. So naturally I started crying my eyes out again. Oh my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not making it sound very appealing, but these were good tears. These were good tears this time, because I'd gone back there. You heard me the first time I said it. These were good tears. I had a birthday party that day, and yeah, maybe not the best time to do some really deep emotional work ahead of a party, but I'd set him free, and that was massive for me. I'd set him free, and in doing so, his last wish was that I go and be free myself. So naturally, I asked myself, how do I be free? And also looked at my needs, and these two things started to converge into one. My needs are to get out, to get away, to be free, to find this independence, and to kind of not separate myself, but be apart from who I was and become who I am now. We have, on my mum's side of the family, we have lots of family in Australia, and they'd always said, whenever mate, whenever, let us know and put us up. And Mum was like, oh, they mean it. I thought, right. I've met one of them, then they'd come over, Kylie and Tio. So I got back in touch with Kylie, and I said, is there any chance? And she said, oh, right on, yeah. And so that was it. The ball was starting to roll. I planned it for a couple months after that time. It was around Christmas where I'd actually begun acting upon it. I'd done the healing side of things. It was time to start putting it into action. And so we planned it for March, which was just a couple months prior to when probably a couple months prior to when you're watching this. It was under the guise of a holiday, but I mentioned it to a few people that this was, for me personally, a fair bit more significantly important. It's a fucking wordy way of saying it. It meant a lot more to me than just going away on a holiday, because this trip became symbolic. It became almost a test to see whether or not I could protect myself, whether I could be the one to look after myself, keep myself safe and set myself free. I've been given the permission, and now it was time just to put it into action. And so come February 28th, I travelled about 17,500 kilometres by myself and stayed for a month with some family over in Australia. Before continuing, thank you to everybody if you're listening to this. I know, because I got some pretty avid Airing It Out podcast listeners in Australia. So to all of you who do, thank you. And a special thank you to Roger, Tio, Tristan and Kylie for putting up with me for a month. Your hospitality meant the world to me. I feel like I might have quickly glossed over some things. So there's that period of time between Christmas and March. That time after I had done that personal work, I had gone back to that single greatest contributor to my trauma and my mental health, mental illness. I had gone back there, I had done that work. I'd taken that boy, the younger version of me, out of there, and I had done what I needed to do to heal him and set him free. You might be asking, you might not be asking, but I'm going to let you know what that did for me. That changed so much about who I was, how I conducted myself, and how I felt about myself. It felt like I had released so much tension, so much stress. I was able to see the world a little bit differently. I carried myself differently in the world, and I felt so much more confident within myself. I felt that every day I was able to protect myself, I was able to look after myself, and I was in the process of setting myself free. And being able to carry those things in your back pocket while also having alleviated yourself from such an incident as that, oh my goodness, it was, say what you want, it was transformative. It changed who I am a lot. So before we get into the Australia Chronicles, I also wanted to make a quick note, a little addition to this episode. I noted how I avoided things from getting worse in my mental health crisis. So if you're ever in one, please, these are what helped me. Some of them might be able to help you. Simplify. Subtract. Reduce workload. Address the root, not the symptom. I'm going to say that again. Address the root and not the symptom. If you're putting out fires all day, fantastic, but you'll be there doing it forever if you don't try and see what's starting those fires. Rest, R-E-S-T, that is the hardest one for me to kind of adopt and learn, because it's just, it doesn't compute with my brain. Oh my God, rest, stop, pause. One of the biggest things that came to my mind was that if I don't stop now, if I don't give myself time away from all of this shit that's causing me horrendous mental health problems, if I don't step away from it and give myself the time to get back on my feet, nothing is going to change. I am not going to get better. I needed, thinking about the context in which we were addressing needs and wants, I needed rest. Another one is saying no. Stop saying yes to everything if you can. If you keep saying yes to everything and it's doing you too much, stop. You've got to discipline. Say no for yourself. And prioritise your health always. Always prioritise your health. If you can't be the number one for yourself, you cannot be number one for anyone else. You can try, but it's a downward spiral. It felt like the wheels were in motion and something that was beginning to change within me, and that I was beginning to feel free as a result of the work that I had done, and more so that I was beginning again to take back control of my own life. Anyway, little tidbit, how I avoided a mental health crisis from getting worse. So the build up to Oz was an interesting one, because it was kind of coming to terms with, why is it that I'm really going there? Because I knew within myself that I wasn't just going for a holiday. And I felt that I had to prove to myself that I was able to put into actions those changes and the work that I had done. Prove to myself that I could set myself free, that I could look after myself, that I could protect myself. And I knew this was going to be a deeply personal trip. Again, it wasn't so much a holiday. I had work to do, personal work to do, but I was also traveling independently halfway across the world. I was meeting 40 plus family members that I'd never met before, who all knew me and wanted to get to know me, and it's a very new challenge for me, particularly considering where I've come from. As more of an introverted, quiet and not so social, not such a high social battery individual. But I will say the month off work was quite nice. And I did ask myself why. Why is it that you're going? If you're not going for a holiday and it feels like something more personal, then why is that? And one day I came up with, it's to celebrate freedom. It's to celebrate this freedom. But when I got to Australia, I realised it was something more than that. It felt like the celebration was the getting there, but the other half of why I was there had to, in some way, be earned. If that makes sense. Now, I'd never experienced jet lag before, and I can tell you now from my first-hand experience, it sucks. For the first week, my mental health was pretty poor. It was pretty full on from the get-go. There's a lot going on in Adelaide, which is where I went at the time, and I was interested and excited, and I went on like an 11k run the morning after I got there. Hindsight, dumb idea, don't do that. So it took a while, and I was in this new place around all of these new people, and I found myself getting really anxious and afraid and timid, and as a result of that I started feeling worse about myself. And so for a whole week I wasn't doing so sharp, until one day I kind of addressed it. I realised something's got to be done about this. I've got to start. What it was is that I've got to start doing stuff for myself here. At that point it felt like I was a bit of a passenger in my own trip away, which is the weirdest feeling. So the opportunity came. I was feeling pretty awful that day as it was, but someone had offered me their car, and it was halfway across the city. And I looked it up on my phone after I just had a nap, and there was a bus in 10 minutes. Fuck, okay, get up and go. I went up and found the address, and I hadn't sorted out my mobile network yet, so I was kind of using Wi-Fi and just kind of meandering about in the areas that I did know. So I got the journey up, take a bus, take another bus, get here, get there, and had it on the Wi-Fi. I got to the bus stop, realised the Wi-Fi had run out, and then it was like, okay, I'm on the bus now, and I've got to go halfway across the city. I've got no internet, no data, no nothing. Shit, okay, this is an interesting challenge. But I sat there on the bus kind of like, this could be fun, this could be interesting. I've got a general idea of where I got to go. I got to go that way. And, I'll be all right. I'll be fine. I'll get there. I'll get there eventually and it'll be okay. But this was that first inclination of, actually, no, I'm going to be all right. I've got no internet to rely on, but it's going to be okay. And we got there and I got off one place on one side of the city and then I had to go catch another bus. But I remembered from when I'd been shown where this person lived, Brendan, massive thank you to Brendan as well. It was pretty much on this road, down that way. I thought, yeah, it's fine, it'll be a couple kilometres. 7 kilometres later, walking in the midday Australian sun with no sunscreen, smart move, I got there. It took a couple hours, but I got there. And that's when things kind of turned on their head, because I was like, cool, okay, right, I can do stuff for myself. I can do it, and it was rewarding, and now I had a car to drive in, so fantastic. That kind of gave me permission to start doing things for myself. So that was it, putting things in the calendar, thinking about what I wanted to do, thinking about where I wanted to go, and just getting it done, doing what I came for and what I wanted to do while I was there. A lot of fun. And it was almost like a flick of a switch where things made sense after that. It was like, right, okay, right, now the momentum's going, now the ball is moving, we're good. And something that dawned on me, I was inspired by the interview that I did with Alex. If you haven't watched that, go check it out. He spoke about how we are human beings, not human doings. Humans shouldn't always feel as though we're inclined to be doing something all the time. It's all right just to be a human being. And here I was in Australia thinking that this freedom had to be earned. I had to work on it, I had to do it. But it was after that day where I looked back and I thought, I'm fucking here. I'm here, I've done this. This has been like 8 years in the works or whatever. I am here. Just being here alone shows me that I have worked enough to have this point of freedom. And that's when it kind of came into my head. Oh, this is like freedom being and not freedom doing. Instead of working, constantly trying to do it, stop. Just be. You are here because you are free. You've done that. You have done that to be here today. So thank you for Alex for that one. The real test for me became my road trip. That was renting a van and going somewhere. Didn't know where, didn't know when, but I booked it in and eventually came up with the destination. But the whole idea was to just enjoy the trip, enjoy my own company, take my time and just be free. Embrace that freedom being and just be as I am, have fun. Enjoy the journey. On the first day, I drove 8.5 hours. That was part of my trip. I was get down to the bottom of where I wanted to go and then just take an easy road back up. And people were actually quite worried about me. I FaceTimed my parents and my girlfriend, and my parents were actually quite worried. I said, no, it's all right. I'm fine. I'm just tired. I've been driving. It's been a long day. But what it actually was, I think in hindsight, was I was scared. I was a bit bug-eyed, oh my God. I'd never done this before. I was putting myself into the deep end of where I'd never been before. I was removing those comforts of security. I was removing contact from other people, contact from support networks, I was working with the timescales from people back home. There wasn't anyone I could just go easy, pop over and have a chat with or a cup of tea with. I was putting myself out there. I was putting myself in conditions and circumstances where there was going to be no one else but me. I was putting myself in the situations where I would have to look after myself, where I would have to be the one that made sure that I was okay and had to protect myself. And the reality of that on the first day was that it was pretty fucking scary, as other people noticed. Day 2, visiting a couple of places. I was trying to journal a little bit and keep up to date with where I was. You know, I hadn't spoken to many people while I was out on the trip, so putting my thoughts down on paper helped. But I also wanted to make a little bit of a log. But what I found I was doing, where everything was up to me, I was like, okay, where am I going to stay? What am I going to eat? What am I going to do? What if I run out of data? What if I don't have data? How is this going to work? I'm not quite sure. What if my phone runs out of charge? What if my power packs run out of charge? Oh fuck, things are starting to get a bit overwhelming. Oh fuck, there's no one that I can talk to. Oh fuck, I'm by myself. Shit. Things were starting to be uncertain. Things weren't going to plan. I didn't have a plan. What if I did have a plan? The whole point of being out here was to kind of play it easy breezy and not have a plan. Fuck, well, I got to have some kind of plan, surely. Where am I going to stay? What am I going to do? And I was like, okay, fuck, I've got to use my logic. I've got to analyse. I've got to think of a way out of this situation, think of a solution to the problem that I'm having. Things were getting things were getting overwhelming, and things were starting to go bad. Then I was like, okay, I can't do this. You know, I realised I'm trying to have an intellectual solution to an emotional problem. This isn't working. This is not working. I've got to get out. Whatever it is I'm doing right now, whatever it is, wherever it is not working. Time to fucking leave. So I was like, right, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I don't have any solutions to the problems that I've just identified. We're getting out and we're going. So I went and found somewhere a little bit further down the line. I took myself there, and it was a coast walk. It was a walk along the coast. It was called, oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of it. It had a really funny name. But as soon as I had done that, as soon as I'd started on this walk, it was as though I'd left all of those problems and those brewing situations that I didn't have a problem with. I just left them behind. I'd gone. That was it. Boom. I'd left them there. And my attitude was completely different. I'd left them, and all of a sudden, it was like I'd gotten in the van and, you know, made sure to close the door before they could follow me in. And I felt great after that. I was walking around in nature. I had that time to process and realise, actually, shit, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. And that was when I'd done it. That was when I had, in the kind of mental thick of it, no support networks, no one to really contact, no one to get hold of, no one to go and see, somewhere I'd never been, somewhere I'd never done, completely on my own. I'd done it. I'd managed to take myself away from a situation. I'd managed to do what I needed to do to look after myself. And I had done what I had to do to protect myself. And that kind of dawned on me, and it slowly started to process. And after that, I was having a happy time walking along this coast. I felt free. I was doing things, I was just enjoying things for simply what it was. And yeah, after that, I went to another place down the coast, and I put on the playlist that I'd made for this exact trip, this exact little mini trip within the trip. That was when it dawned on me that when it came down to the crunch, I had been able to do it. I had been able to take myself away. I had been able to put in action all of that healing and all of that work that I had done from that incident all the way back when. I'd managed to put it into action and free myself from those anxieties, free myself from those controlling worries. And in doing that, that for me was the golden ticket to having set myself free. So naturally, again, on having put my playlist on and travelling to that, I cried my eyes out again. But these were the happiest tears that I'd ever cried in my life, because I had done it. I knew it. Recounting it, it might not seem that significant, but to me, I had just proved that I can take care of myself, that I can look after myself, and I can take myself away from the situation. I had just proved that I was able now to do what I have to do to handle the problems which had been caused by the single most significant contributor to my trauma. I just proved that I could do it. And when the chips are down, and we're looking at that kind of situation again, I've got it. I can do this now. So yeah, crap my eyes out. That one event which cast a near decade-long shadow over my future, that had kept me for so long a prisoner in my own mind, I was now free from. And what's more, I was the one who had set myself free. After 8.5 years. A lot of people asked me if that trip was good. I came back and oh, Sam, how'd you get on your trip, mate? How was it? Good wasn't the answer. Great wasn't the answer. Because I know that is what I said, because that's kind of what you reply, but that's not why I went. To me, my answer to how was your trip was that it was successful. I achieved what I wanted to achieve. It's probably the single greatest, most personal achievement for a very long time. It's a successful trip. So as we begin to sign off this episode about growth, overcoming and reflection, as we mentioned at the start of the video, we've got a couple of takeaways just to really kind of, for me, to kind of underline the things that I hope that you can take away from this episode. So the first takeaway is no matter where you are, no matter who you are at this moment and how much work you have done, there is always room for growth. Number 2, the work you might have to do might seem incredibly daunting. It might seem incredibly difficult. But the more difficult, the more daunting, the more self-fulfilling. Number 3, the darkest times that you might have to go through might give way to the most meaningful growth. Number 4, if knowing who I was 8.5 years ago, and knowing how low I felt every single day and how little I thought of myself and how little worth I gave to myself, if knowing that he can do it, I wholeheartedly believe whatever the work is that you need to do, whatever it is that you want to do, I wholeheartedly believe that you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it, and I believe in you. So that is the end of the Australia Chronicles. We still haven't figured out a title for this episode. Path to Meaning is nice. But yeah, where we're standing right now, we don't quite know. If you're at the end of the episode, thank you for joining us. This was a very personal one for me. It was a difficult one. I got a little bit choked up at a couple times. I don't know if you'll hear it. If you can notice that at all, Ben, don't cut it out. We'll leave it in. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. I hope there is something that you can take away from it. Quick plug before we go. Please, if you can, and you believe in what we're doing, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a follow on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, or give us a share. A share would be amazing. And if you can, please consider supporting us on Buy Me a Coffee. we're starting to build some decent momentum in terms of production and what we're getting out of doing this, as well as the work that it is that we're doing inherently. So let's get this message out there to more people. And if you're able to, give us a bit of backing on Buy Me a Coffee. Tune in for next week's episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Love you guys. Take care of yourselves. And we'll see you then.